Welcome to the stream, everyone. Good morning, good
Hello.
afternoon, buenos dias, bonjour, wherever you are. Good afternoon, good evening. Maybe you're watching in the middle of the night because you can't sleep. We're so glad you're here.
Whatever
Hey,
time of day,
Sarah.
welcome. Hello.
Hi. Y'all, if it's your first time here or you're catching the replay of this stream, this is Wednesday Science Fiction Story Club. Sarah Ray Werner and I are both writers. We'll tell you a little bit about ourselves momentarily. And every Wednesday, we're working our way through this anthology. This is the big book of science fiction edited by Anne and Jeff Vandermeer. There are over 100 short stories in this collection. So I'm just going to say this for the next 2 years. We are going to be reading one story a week from the point of view of writers engaging with these texts in terms of kind of what can we learn as writers, but also, of course, as avid readers, lovers of sci-fi. This is part of a larger project on this channel called the Public Writers Workshop, in which we're building community around folks in process who believe that through reading and writing, we can make great art, change the world, better ourselves, and sleep better at night. Anyway, that is the task at hand. Nothing short, nothing more, but it starts one short story at a time. For full context, on Thursdays, that would be tomorrow, same time, we read stories from this anthology. This is called The Dark Descent. This is a collection of short horror stories, and on Fridays, we do live writing workshops. Anyway, Sarah, do you want to tell us about yourself, who you are?
Well, yeah, and first I want to say what a beautiful intro. Thank you for that. Wow. You're so good. Hello everyone. My name is Sarah Ray Werner. As Asa noted, I am a writer and podcast producer living here in the Midwestern United States, where it is now cold outside and we have frost. So that's a thing. It was 90 degrees 2 days ago. Let's see. I am just really excited. I haven't read a lot of these stories before, even though I am a self-proclaimed sci-fi nerd. So I'm really getting a fire hose education here on the history of sci-fi writing as a craft. So excited to be here with you today and dive into a story. Asa, who are
Amazing.
you?
Yes, I will share that shortly. You know, if you did not read this story, A Martian Odyssey by Stanley G. Weinbaum is the story we're discussing today. Don't worry, we're going to tell you what it's about. We'll give you a paraphrase, and I think it'll be engaging regardless. We'll paint you pictures, read you passages. I'm Asa Merritt. My background's in screenwriting. I wrote a project for Audible starring Stephanie Shu from Everything Everywhere All at Once called Six Sermons. And now, however, I'm writing short fiction, hence this YouTube channel, hence AuthorTube, hence all of this great material, great input. And slowly but surely, I'm writing short stories. So that's me. If you're a writer, you're a reader, we'd love to hear from you. Tell us who you are in the comments, or why you're here, or where you're tuning in from. This is an interactive story club. And the more we engage together, what we always find is that the more we get out, both, as readers and writers. It's just kind of like there's so many great minds on YouTube, quite simply. And we're grateful for you here. A Martian Odyssey. The quick and dirty here is that this is a long short story. This is, I don't know, I'm just going to throw out a number, 8,000 words, perhaps something. And it is essentially kind of a travel log. This might be the diary of someone visiting Mars. In that it just is a series of incidents. It's like this crazy thing happened, and then I saw this. Specifically, this is a astronaut or a space explorer recalling everything that they saw over a series of 7 days in Mars. They encounter monsters, they encounter lost cities, they encounter architecture, and it's just sort of a reportage, if you will, of their time. So that is like the shape of it. And we usually start these conversations, before getting into the nuts and bolts of the craft, the writing techniques employed in the story. As readers, what was your emotional experience here, Sarah, reading this story?
I had a really good emotional experience reading this story. I'm going to be honest. I always like to be incredibly honest. I saw how long this story was and I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get through this? But then I found that Stanley G. Weinbaum wrote this story, published it in 1934, and then passed away. He was only 33 years old when he died, which is mind blowing. He only wrote a few things. This is one of them. And it notes in the introduction here by the Vandermeers that we lost a great talent. And if this was his first science fiction story. And I kept that in mind as I was reading it and just looked at what he was doing. But really, structure aside, which we'll talk about in just a little bit, what grabbed me was the narrative voice. Like, he has a strong narrative voice. Like, this is a strong narrator. And like you mentioned earlier, it's told through a narrator named Dick Jarvis, who is a chemist sent to Mars. They're the first human beings on Mars from Earth. And the voices, and something we've talked about a little bit before in science fiction that also struck me was we have an ensemble cast. Like, they don't show up a whole lot, but their presence is very much it's very felt because this is the audience for the story. And Asa, I love you pointing out that this is a sort of a travelogue. I liked that. And it is relayed in a sort of and then sort of storytelling, but it works. And I want to talk about why it works a little bit later. So ensemble cast, their great chemistry between the ensemble cast that also got me was it's essentially a monologue, but it manages to allow other characters to be interesting and we see their personalities. So I just thought it was a really rich social experience, like just being there with this party of 4 people on Mars with their distinct personalities as they go through Jarvis's adventure. So that was my first impressions. What about you?
Gosh, I love that. That is such great commentary. I didn't think about some of those things, so I'm excited to talk more about some of them. My experience was one of like delight, and I think it's a real kind of strength of this story club as we encounter stuff that we wouldn't necessarily read. My tastes tend towards dark, tragic, depressing, spiritual, existential, which is just where my mind lives so often. And so often that's where the fiction resonates for me. But this, again, as we've seen other times in this story club, other stories in this collection, is that there's a real sense of play. And I
Yes.
got the sense, again, just this feeling that this writer enjoyed writing this, that there's just a sense of adventure at work in their imagination, which pops on the page.
Yeah.
And reading this, I just felt that. And I felt the sense of farce. There was so much farce. I wrote LOL in the margins many times. Just the preposterousness and the straight-faced preposterousness I found really compelling. What I'm alluding here to, if you didn't get a chance to read this story, is this story is written in the 30s. It honestly just feels like one of these like 50s movies or something where the characters are just like, you don't say, George.
Wow, golly. Yeah.
I can like really hear that voice so
I did
frequently.
too. Yes.
And unlike some of those movies, though, however, I got the sense that this writer, Weinbaum, there was a little bit of irony. There was a little bit of tongue in cheek. He recognized the outrageousness of the characters who he populated this story with. So for me, it was just like the site, and it took me a little while to get there, to get to this place. Hey, Mateo, welcome. Good morning.
Mateo.
It took me a little while to get to that place of seeing the tone for what it was and then kind of living in it. But once I did, I really, at the beginning, I was not like grabbed by this story. It was like, okay, cool. We've got aliens, like whatever. There's not any kind of emotional weight here. What am I doing? But then once I kind of started meeting the story on its terms, which is to say, this is like a fun romp travelogue of the first people who ever visited Mars. I was like, I can hang with this. I'm finding value and meaning. Yeah. So that's what it was for me.
Oh, I love that. And I like that was something that I forgot happened too. I started reading this and you don't know what to expect going in. You just know that this is a science fiction story from the 30s and who knows what you're going to get. And I was like, oh boy, gosh, golly, gee whiz, we're in our green or silver spacesuits and we're meeting some Martians. But then you're right, I warmed up to it. And this is a smart writer who knows what he's doing. He knows how to play with language and he knows how to both set and then subvert your expectations. So it was at the beginning, I was like, oh no. And then I was hooked about, I guess, even by the bottom of the first page, I was like,
Wow.
okay, I'm here for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. The title helped with that for me. A Martian
Yes.
Odyssey. Again, just like an unironic, like an odyssey across Mars.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
what he gave us.
I have a question too
Yeah.
before we dive in. That title, you probably know a little bit more than I do about classical literature. What is an Odyssey?
Oh
Is that
gosh,
something like,
I don't know if that's true. So we can start there. Well, I mean, I think here I don't think that there's any kind of direct reference to Homer's The Odyssey. I don't. I get the sense that the word here is meaning kind of the most direct version of the what definition of that word, which is to say like an expansive journey. An
perfect?
expansive journey with, in this case, no clear end in the Odyssey. I'm blanking on his name.
Homer?
Odysseus. Odysseus is
Oh.
trying to get home. Is trying to get home. There's a clear direction, and in this, in a way, I guess there is something like that. Trying to get back to the ship, which is the closest sense of home
Mm.
for these characters in this world. Encountering a series of obstacles along the way, a series of fantastical creatures. The lotus eaters, the sirens, the mermaids in the Odyssey. Similarly, I noticed that he wrote another story in the introduction. It gives us, he wrote a story called The Lotus
The
Eaters.
Lotus Eaters.
So, clearly, as we've talked about, these writers, you go back 100 years and there's just a lot fewer books that they're reading.
Yeah.
So, I'm with that. I think that, Ares is the name of the ship. There is an engagement with the classical tradition here. That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah. So, I mean, where do we jump in here, Sarah? Where do we jump in?
Can we jump in with the tone? Because that's
Hmm.
what first really got my attention. So we have these four Earthlings. We have these four humans on Mars. We open up and they're annoyed. They are annoyed. The first thing we hear is our main character, Jarvis. He stretches and he starts complaining. He's like, oh, finally, air you can breathe. He exulted. It feels as thick as soup after the thin stuff out here. So you get the feeling that these four guys, they're on this awesome space mission and they are super annoyed. They are in pain. They are like, Jarvis refers to his ship as like his cramped little bucket. It just starts off with this subverted tone where, a lot of sci-fi has a very aspirational, hopeful tone, like, here I am amongst the stars. And like, no, Weinbaum immediately starts us off with, oh my gosh, I can finally breathe. This sucks. Like,
I
I
love
thought that
that.
was really funny.
I love that. I love that. There's none of this like great stamp for man, one giant leap for mankind. No, no. These
Yeah.
could be like fishermen.
Yes.
It's like I'm sick of this boat. I'm sick of
Yes.
smelling like fish. You know,
Yeah.
that's a great point.
So I love that. We open up, we get this tone and it carries through the whole story. It's a very strong, unwavering tone and I think it really works here. So that was for me, that was like my diving in place and that really to me set an expectation of trust in this writer that like, oh, he's taking me somewhere interesting, he's self-aware, he's funny. That really got me interested.
I love that. That's actually a really exciting idea to me. Is this sense of trust from the writer, right? Just picking a tone
Mhm.
that's specific and interesting, and yes, in this case, surprising, and then committing to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let me just talk through some of the things that happen, and then maybe we can kind of use that as a way to like decide what to talk about. So, you know, Well, in the introduction, let's actually some contextualization here.
Okay.
One thing that the Vandermeers say is that this was a breakthrough story in science
Yes.
fiction. That this was a story that did things that had never been done. Uh, Immediately emerged as the most promising science fiction writer of the 30s. And I'm trying to find here what it
Oh,
was that made this so exceptional.
right. So I can actually pick up from there and say, because I
Yeah,
underlined it,
yeah.
the story broke new ground in attempting to envisage life on other worlds in terms of strange and complex ecosystems. Um, he there's also, and I think this ties in, so I'm going to read this as well. There's also a quote from H.P. Lovecraft, which surprises me because I always think about Lovecraft as this like creepy shut-in, but I guess, he was part of a literary community. Go figure. So H.P. Lovecraft says about Weinbaum, somehow Weinbaum had the imagination to envisage wholly alien situations and psychologies and entities, to devise consistent events from wholly alien motives, and to refrain from the cheap dramatics in which almost all adventure pulpists wallow. So I
Mhm.
think those two sections from the intro really highlight what was special about this story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that resonates. I think like foregrounding the non-human characters.
Yes.
He gives them
Yes.
names, he gives them vocabularies. A key motif is he gives them intelligences, right?
Mhm.
Versus
Mhm.
just a bunch of dudes going up into space and killing monsters.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
Right.
and we see different varieties of intelligence, which really was interesting to me and not something that we see. We tend to be as human beings, being geocentric initially. Like we tended to see ourselves as like the baseline for everything, which maybe that's fair because that's how our brains work.
Well, and that's the
But
foil of the rest
yes.
of the crew.
Yes. Yes. Do you want to talk about that for a second?
Well, I mean, I think that's just kind of it, is that like the crew is giving us the readers dubiousness.
Mm.
The questions
Mhm.
that the crew asks possibly are the ones that we're asking. The trying to poke holes in this narrative. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Like consistently just like, no way, there's no way. And then the narrator having to kind of justify and in the storytelling paint them this vision of like, no, 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 you are wrong.
Yeah.
Your mere human mind is not going to where it needs to go because this is the future.
I
This is
really enjoyed
Mars.
that. Yes, I enjoyed that. I loved how aggressive these four guys are so aggressive and they're annoyed. They've been cramped up on Mars in this little spaceship rocket station thing that they're in. They're annoyed with each other. They treat each other like siblings, like on a car trip. And one thing I noticed too, Asa, that you just brought to my mind was I was thinking about this as like a call and response sort of story. So we get a little bit of Jarvis's narrative, and then people respond to it in varying stages of disbelief. It reminded me of the story we read last week a little bit, The Conquest of Gola, which is similarly a narrator, and this one is an alien intelligence, a narrator sharing with her daughters the story of these men who came to Venus from Earth and tried to conquer them. But these stories could not be more different. I mean, I guess they could be more different, but they are very, very different, despite that same framework being used for both of them. So,
Yeah, that's a
yeah.
really interesting point. I mean, what we're seeing in our emerging understanding, certainly for me, I know you really consumed a lot of science fiction media, but like two common strains are it's like sci-fi is a means of metaphor, allegory. We talked about the conte philosophique,
Yeah.
this 19th century mode of storytelling where a sci-fi story delivers a message. It exists in that space a lot. And then it just also exists in, I guess, maybe more kind of fantasy type media literature where it's just like, this is for fun.
Mhm.
We are going on an adventure together. We're not going to worry about what we're saying. We're not going to worry about even characters necessarily. We're going to go hang out in the future and see what's up.
I
And
love
this
that.
falls into that category.
Yeah, it does. It does. And maybe that's part of what made it such a joy to read was I noticed some things. I noticed a little commentary. I noticed a few things, but it wasn't a strain to think, okay, this is symbolic of this, and therefore, it really. It's funny to me. It feels like it took some of the math out of it, even though there is an intelligent being in the story who communicates via math, and yeah, it works. It
By
works
math,
really
do
well.
you mean just like hard science? Say more on that. What do you mean by
Yeah. Yeah, no, so by math, I mean a little bit more when you're reading a story that feels deeply symbolic, and I'm thinking of digging into Young Goodman Brown, which we did a few weeks ago. I felt in reading Young Goodman Brown that there was an expectation that I needed to be like taking notes. There was an expectation that I needed to be like, okay, this equals this, and here's the proper conclusion I should draw from this, and apply to my moral life as a human being. And I just felt like I wasn't doing those sorts of equations with this story. I was just able to like read it and enjoy it
Yeah, that's actually really
on its
sweet.
own merits.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it made it easy to read. Like we were talking about this, Sarah and I were talking about how like this was one of the longer stories, but it kind of flew by.
Yeah. Yep. It flew by in the really the best way. And it's interesting too. Weinbaum started off as I want to say he was an engineer, and then one day he just
Chemist.
started writing. Oh, as a chemist, yes, and then
Right.
just started writing. I love that. I always like to. This is a short sidebar for me here too. We talk a lot about, oh, I don't have the right equipment to write. I don't have the right education. Just read a lot, write a lot.
Totally.
I shouldn't make it sound so flippant, but it's really I want to just emphasize that.
Yeah, I mean, right. Especially back 100 years ago, so many writers were just living wild lives, and then every now and then writing things down, and then they started
Yep.
doing more of that.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I love that. That's inspiring.
Yeah. So where were we? We were talking about the crew. We were talking about intelligences.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, let's think about what else, to the extent that the story is saying something. I think it's exciting to look at how the story seems to be really saying that as humans, we overestimate ourselves,
Mm,
we underestimate things we don't understand, we make assumptions about defects more than
mm.
assuming possibility.
Ooh,
You
yeah.
know, that seems to be
Oh,
kind of, those seem to be kind of central themes, to the extent that the story has themes.
yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And maybe we keep saying things like, "Oh, there's no symbolism," and like, "Oh, there's maybe themes." I think maybe they're just super well integrated and they work. And this is an example of how to do it right instead of having things be like agonizing and torturous and like doing, the Thomas Hardy, math equations in your head. Um, I had a point and it was like, oh, it was very smart and very good.
Yeah,
Can
yeah.
you tell me what you were just saying that would have
Oh,
sparked
I
that?
was just saying that there are metaphors here, right? The
Mm,
story, the story is saying things about, yeah,
yes, yeah. So, in especially in genre fiction, like horror and science fiction, we talk a lot about tropes. And tropes aren't necessarily bad things, right? They're just patterns that we have created and continue to create in the literature that we write, in the stories we write, the stories we tell. There's a trope in early science fiction, being like 30s, 40s, 50s, about a person going to a planet and just immediately assuming everything there is a horrible monster and shooting it with a ray gun.
right.
And that this story has such an unusual and deep empathy. And that's the point that you were just making, Asa, about like going into this. Like our character, we're told very early on that Jarvis has a gun, and you know, he's willing to use it. He's carrying a whole bunch of stuff, but he's also willing to use this gun. And he meets one of the main alien characters named Tweel, who is described as a freak ostrich and travels by launching itself into the air and like diving into the sand of Mars with its beak, which was just amazing. So we have our freak ostrich. When when Jarvis first sees Tweel. Tweel is fighting with a tentacle monster and losing. And Jarvis has the initial instinct like, oh, I'm just going to like see what's happening. He watches for a minute and he sees that clearly Tweel is intelligent. He's carrying tools and he's like, oh, I should help this person. And like immediately it struck me that he could have just blown them both away and been on his way. But what he does is he tries several different methods of communicating with Tweel until he finds one that works. He's patient, he's empathetic, and seems very genuinely delighted to be making friends with Tweel. And that really, that patience, that empathy really, I don't know, it really struck me as something that a lot of, especially like pulp stories where, you know, you go into the jungle and you just shoot everything. It's a safari, whatever, where this is, oh, I'm going to put my ego aside. And he even says that like Tweel is smarter than we are, like to the other humans. And I don't know. Yeah. And Mateo's saying in the comments, unusual deep empathy. Oh, it's such a sad sentence. I know. I love empathy. And when I see it in early pulp stories like this that would have mostly had a male readership, like at the time, I love to see the empathy. I love it. Friendship, empathy. We're here for these things.
I like that you said the word safari. While you were talking, I had this idea that another kind of subtle way that the story foregrounds non-human life forms is our first encounter with them is actually between two other, the first encounter is not
Yeah,
between a person and an alien. It's like between
right.
two aliens. And so it's already like lending this planet, Mars, its own kind of rules of life and order. This idea of like witness. This character is a
Yeah.
witness of something special. Like, you kept saying empathy. I think her curiosity. Curiosity
Mm.
also really applies here. And that makes us curious as readers.
Hmm. Yeah, I wrote down, it's so funny you say that. I wrote down at the bottom of one of these pages that was so appealing. I wrote curiosity in all caps, and I wish I could find it. Yes, humans equals curious. And really, I mean, that's what drives the story in a way is just Jarvis, yes, is trying to get back to the ship, but he's like pulled into all of these side quests just out of curiosity. Like he sees lights and he follows them. And he wants to make friends with Tweel and they go, they walk together, they travel together. Yeah, it's just it's kind of all the best things about science fiction is
Mhm.
curiosity and empathy and love of discovery without the need to like dominate or kill.
Right.
So I enjoyed that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's still, the sort of presence of firearms, in both Jarvis and the alien definitely
Yes.
keeps one foot in that kind of like comic book pow pow like
Yeah.
sci-fi tradition, you know. Um, but it's not foregrounded. It's not actually at the heart.
Yeah. Well, and what's notable about so Tweel, who is this freak ostrich character who has a gun, we're kind of led to be more curious about the the workings of the gun. It is made out of crystal. There's no trigger. You squeeze the handle to shoot it. It shoots out poison glass darts and it's powered by steam. And it's like that's what we care about with this gun is like not like how much, how many things can it kill or like how cool, can you do a cool flip while shooting it? It's more about like, oh, this is like different, interesting, like engineering. And I don't know,
Yeah,
I appreciated that.
yeah. I'm gonna like Google briefly here when the steam locomotive came around. I mean, it's doing that fun
Oh,
thing. It's doing that fun thing that sci-fi does, which is like it engages with current tech and sees how you can expand it. So, they've been around way longer than
I
I
was gonna
thought.
say, I want to say like 1860s,
I mean, I
1850s.
think that's when they really got going. It looks like the tech was like even earlier, early 1800s. But still, right? I mean, that's like, yeah, I mean, firearms are operating differently with gunpowder, whatever. This is like different. This is steam, right? going from like the trigger to the squeezing, all this little stuff. Yeah, I mean that's super classic, fun sci-fi. Like let's invent tech based on tech.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved that. And like the first, like later on, Jarvis is like, I want to know how to recreate this gun. Like that's what he cares about is like the joy in the technology. So I think that's where a lot of the joy in the story comes from too.
Mateo Leon Rodriguez says, "How interesting! Even as an alien from a different planet, they have firearms, and it sounds like they are a just in case." Right.
Yes, that's a really good insight is how common nonviolence is to both of these intelligent species. Well, and even when they meet a third type of intelligence, the mound builders, which they meet later, they are also not inclined first and foremost to violence. And like there's a twist at the end of the story, but we get the feeling that like the mound builders, if something had not happened, something in particular, the mound builders would have just ignored them and not chased after them and, tried to fight them. Like these three intelligences are all fundamentally nonviolent.
That's interesting. I think because the emphasis on that also indicates and shows humans' preoccupation with our instinct for violence.
Yeah.
Focusing on how each of these species has an inclination of violence only as self-defense is actually maybe this is like the high school paper version here,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
like demonstrative of our own obsession around that, like anxiety around how like our first instinct is violence. Yeah. That's like, yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that was really cool and unusual, especially for a pulp science fiction story from, the early 1900s. So very cool.
Totally. Well, I feel like this one's moving faster than normal, but let's see. Is there anything you want to talk about
Yeah.
before what we can get to as writers? Yeah. What
Yeah.
else
Oh,
is on here?
I have a bunch of
Okay,
things.
let's go through.
Um, oh, the other thing, sorry, and I keep looking like the beauty of friendship and empathy. Like he and Tweel end up singing together. They don't know each other's languages, but they are singing together as they walk across Mars. Like it's so cute. Um, but I'd like to talk for a second about the humor. So
Yes, let's talk about the humor.
we both noted that we wrote LOL in the margins multiple times. Um, can we just talk about how humor is used in this story and like what it's used for?
Yes, when you were talking about it earlier, and you were talking about how maybe this is message-driven, metaphorical, it just is so cleanly executed. I think the humor could play a role there, right? Like just
Yes, yes.
spoonful of sugar vibes, or kind of comic relief vibes.
Yeah.
I know Taylor, a Taylor and Bright. I don't know if you're listening right now in the Discord, which we'll share, y'all. Is reading Macbeth right now. That's one of the darkest works of literature, but there's comic relief. We have the classic Porter talking about getting a hard on when you get drunk. I mean, that stuff is funny. And it's kind of the spoonful of sugar stuff. And maybe that's partly why it's working here. It's like to deliver this actually larger philosophical point.
It also really helps us. I'm a big fan of humor, and we've talked, I think in past episodes, we've talked about horror and humor, horror and comedy being very similar in execution, in that timing is everything, repetition is everything, pacing is everything. And I love that there were setups and payoffs for the jokes. Like,
Mm.
and I was just looking at I'm always curious about how humor works in stories because
Yeah, you
it's
want to you want
so
to set
rare.
one
I
for us?
do.
Yeah,
I
let's hear
do.
it.
Okay, so to set this up, the first kind of intelligence that we're dealing with here is humans. The second is Tweel, the freak ostrich. Then there's the third human, or excuse me, the third intelligence, which is these mound builders. And they are the most alien on the scale of human to alien. Tweel's somewhere in the middle, can communicate, gets them. So I'm just going to read this part to you because,
Let's hear
like,
it.
it actually had me laughing. Okay, so Jarvis goes up to the mound builders, and they're like running around. They have these carts full of rubble because they're building mounds. And he gets in front of them, and sort of just like he did with Tweel, he wants to establish friendship. And he says, they passed us by like they didn't even notice us. I wasn't going to be ignored by a bunch of barrels playing train. So when the third one approached, I planted myself in the way, ready to jump, of course, if the thing didn't stop. But it did. It stopped and set up a sort of drumming from the diaphragm on top. These have very interesting anatomy. And I held out both hands and said, "We are friends." So this is the setup of a joke that's going to carry through the rest of the story. Um, and what do you suppose the thing did? Jarvis asks his crewmates. Well, so there's this cantankerous captain named Harrison. Well, said, "Pleased to meet you, I'll bet," suggested Harrison. Well, I couldn't have been more surprised if it had, but instead it drummed on its diaphragm and then suddenly boomed out, "We are friends," and gave its pushcart a vicious poke at me. A minute later, another one came hurrying along. This one didn't pause, but simply drummed out, "We are friends," and scurried by. How did it learn the phrase? Are they a hive mind, etc.? And he said, anyway, the creatures went sailing past us, everyone greeting us with the same statement. It got to be funny. I never thought to find so many friends on this godforsaken ball. Like, so it's just this image of like all these little strange little guys with all these limbs, and they have a whole bunch of eyeballs just walking past you and saying, "We are friends. We are friends," every time they go past you. You get the feeling that they thought this was a password in order to get past Jarvis, because he changes it later. And this is the joke building on itself. And I know the best way to ruin a joke is to explain it, but I don't care. I'm going to explain this anyway. So there's a Jarvis is determined to like build relationships with these aliens, with these mound builders, and Tweel is here by his side. Yes, Mateo says that is so fun. I know, it's just fun. It's just lovely. So, okay. So Jarvis is like, step 2. Okay, we're gonna like interact and communicate. He's very determined. And so let's see. I decided to have another chat. I stepped in his path again and waited. Up he came, booming out, "We are friends," and stopped. I looked at him. 4 or 5 of his eyes looked at me. He tried to pass by, but I stood firm. And then the dashed creature reached out one of his arms, and 2 finger-like nippers tweaked my nose. And he said, I yelled, "Ouch," and jumped aside, and the creature dashed away. But from then on, their greeting was, "We are friends." Ouch. And like that becomes now for the rest of the time. There's these aliens running by saying, "We are friends." Ouch. And it just it ends up being ludicrous. It ends up being, I think you used the word farcical maybe earlier. It ends up being just very silly. And then a page later, Tweel was as lost as I was. We couldn't get any help from the natives. They paid no attention at all, except to assure us they were friends. Ouch. And so like he keeps playing with this in a way that like really endears us to the character, because I feel like that's how we would act and laugh about things in a similar situation. It just felt very human. It felt very grounded and connected. And so the "we are friends," ouch, kind of becomes a little theme for the rest of the story.
Totally. It was great. Yeah, just committing to the bit, building the joke, right? These aren't like one-liners. This is like an ongoing comic motif that just grows. Juxtaposing.
And it gets sillier.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, this is like slapstick.
Yes.
I think part of it, what makes it is like the aliens are so weird looking. Like he describes them as little barrels with 4 legs and no head.
Yeah.
But they still have these like really human gestures. And I think that's like part of what makes them so funny too.
I do too. And just playing with like what communication looks like and what communication can be. You know, he and Tweel hit it off right away. They were singing songs, walking across the Martian desert. These guys are not, they're intelligent in a different way. And I think that that's a good thing to explore. And Jarvis even tells his companions later, he's like, these mound builders, he's like, they may have even been smarter than Tweel and me. Like he's like they were like up here somewhere. And I don't know, I just like exploring and playing around with like what is intelligence, what is sentience, how do we relate to each other? You know, I mentioned earlier this felt like a deeply social story because of the relationships that are forged, the existing relationships with the side characters. I don't know, they're just I it was just enjoyable though. Like I didn't feel the need to like, X equals Y, symbol equals meaning kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. It's like experiential, you know. It's
Yeah.
like it's not necessarily that I'm going to remember this story or leave with my perspective changed, but I had an amazing experience watching it or reading it rather.
Yeah.
It
Well,
was defined by fun. Yeah.
yeah, it was. And that's so valid. That's so valid, especially in writing literature, and especially in writing literary short stories. I know we feel driven, and I say we, meaning not necessarily you, but like speaking for myself, if I'm going to write something that's I'm going to submit to a magazine or to a journal, I want to sound smart. I want to be hailed as the next new literary genius, you know? So it's just interesting that you can also just have fun and be recognized as the new voice of the 1930s.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's why I've been enjoying Story Club is to be reminded that there's so many ways that I don't know to create. That sounds so banal, but I really feel that way with a story like this. It just expands my definition of what that looks like.
Same. Can we touch on one more thing?
All the things, Sarah. That's what we're here
Okay,
for.
let's talk about the ending. Endings in short stories are often where the punch drives home.
You know
And
what? Hang on, Sarah. Before we even
yeah.
start, I want to make sure we
Oh, yeah, yeah.
engage
Oh,
Mateo. And if
perfect.
anyone else is out there, tell us how you feel about some of these
Yeah.
thoughts. We'd love to hear it and present and share this collective hive mind of this
Yes.
book club. It's so nice to have humor when most of the other sci-fi stories have been on the more serious side. Absolutely. I was thinking about how you could rewrite this story with the same plot without a single joke in it. It would feel like that one adventure story we just had recently where similarly they're rescued at the end and it's like a thriller.
Yeah.
Not that being more serious is a bad thing. It's just nice to have that spoonful of sugar. Couldn't agree more. Okay,
Right.
the
Well,
ending. Yeah.
before we get to the ending, we were talking a little bit earlier about structure, and I wanted to point out that a lot of times an and then structured narrative. So like this happened and then we went here. Like there it's not based on causality so much as cool things happening. The and then storytelling structure worked here. And I think that was partially due to how much fun it was to read, due to the humor, due to he very skillfully Weinbaum very skillfully. I started making little notes about these when I saw them. He sets up our expectations right before he tells us things, and he does that several times to keep us engaged. So that's a really good way to structure if you're telling an and then story. I'm going to just real quick. Um, he says, even more impossible than that. Oh, what's that? I'll tell you later. The point I'm making now is that Tweel and his race, etc., etc. He does this several times. He does it on page, I want to say, yep, here. I was too tired to argue with him. Later, I discovered what he meant. And like he
Yeah.
sets up these little hooks, these little expectations for us to anticipate more secrets to be revealed.
I think that's a great point. Yeah, just a very quick, simple suspense, keep the pages turning. Laura Hunter's in the mix. Welcome.
Oh,
Welcome, welcome,
hello.
welcome. Quick hit from Laura. Hi, all just wanted to stop in to send my love. Scans and labs at Dartmouth until 3 p.m. Sneaking in a few minutes to watch you both in the waiting room.
Oh,
Sounds like a
thank you for
sci-fi
stopping
story.
by. Yeah.
Hey, Laura.
Thank you for
We're glad to
stopping
have you.
by.
Thanks for
Hope
stopping in.
everything goes well. Yeah.
Yeah,
Gosh.
no, we'll be thinking about you.
Very much.
Per that, in addition, right, those little hooks
Mhm.
happen. I think that's great. Classic, just clear suspense writing. But I think another important thing to mention is that the and then storytelling is really set up at the beginning.
Mm.
The
Mm.
story gives itself our terms. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It
This is
lets us
such a good
know.
point.
It lets us know.
Yes.
It's like, hey, everybody, this is a travelogue. I just had this crazy time on Mars, and I'm going to tell you every little thing that happened. it gives
Yeah.
us that. So it just, I never felt, I think in a different kind of story that didn't give us that clear guidelines up front, I would feel maybe resentful of an and then storytelling, or at least kind of like waiting for the story to start. When it's like, no, 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 sit down, pull up, get your cup of coffee, and listen.
Yeah.
I'm just imagining, a grandpa coming back and like, this is the time I came to Mars, and then just telling
Yeah.
them all the wild things that happen.
Yeah. Yeah. In such a human and humorous way that it just feels real and
Totally,
timeless. Yeah.
totally. Okay, wait, did you talk about the ending though? No, no.
We
What?
haven't talked about the
Let's talk
ending.
about
Can
the
we?
ending. Yeah.
Okay, so I've been going on this whole time, and just like stop me or interrupt me if I'm just like barreling
Well,
on.
let me give a quick
Yes.
paraphrase for folks who might not
Okay.
have read the story of what happens at the ending. So Tweel. So Tweel, who are astronaut names, they're pals, they're running around, they're exploring Mars. They go into these caves where all these mound cart people live, and they kind of get up to no good. And they start getting folks angry in this little world. They have to flee. They're in the cave system. They can't find sunlight. They're trying to escape. They can't. They finally do escape, but the cart people are chasing them on their little carts. It's life or death stakes, but also silly. They get pushed into a corner. They escape in the nick of time. The spaceship comes down, pulls them out of the craziness. Tweel hops over the mound and has disappeared into Mars. And the astronaut has stolen something
Mm-hmm.
from the mound people. Attempting to steal this thing is what drove the mound people to chase them. He has stolen this crystal, this magic healing crystal. And that is revealed at the very end, is like a twist ending. So that's the context for what Sarah's about to talk about here. That's what happened.
Yes. Oh, that's so good. That's such a good explanation of it. That would have taken me 20 minutes just inventing my own language over here, for the fun of it. This ending. Okay. When he's telling the story, like Asa just said, Jarvis is telling the story and doesn't give a reason initially for why he and Tweel are being attacked. And we've gone on and on about this being a story of empathy and friendship, and it's not colonial at all. And everybody is happy and peaceful and wants to get along. Jarvis experiences the healing power of this crystal. He has a wart on his finger and it like falls off and he's healed. And he talks about that. And then he says, next thing we knew, they were chasing us out of there. And I think it was really, it's really interesting. And then as Asa said, at the end, the four men of the Aries were silent, even the sardonic Harrison. At last, little Leroy, who is French, broke the stillness. I should like to see, he murmured. Yeah, said Harrison, and the wart cure. Too bad you missed that. It might have been the cancer cure they've been hunting for a century and a half. Oh, that, muttered Jarvis gloomily. That's what started the fight. He drew a glistening object from his pocket. Here it is. And that's where the story ends. So there's two things that I wanted to look at here. First of all, Jarvis didn't tell us, at the beginning of the story that the reason, yes, 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 there's a subtle hint that he took it. Mateo says, yes. But they don't say, well, I stole the egg and then they got mad and started chasing us out of
Right.
their labyrinth, which is described as like an anthill, which I thought was really cool, especially if it's a hive mind species. I thought that was just kind of a fun touch based on Earth ecology. Um, so Jarvis withholds that information and apparently isn't going to tell his comrades that he stole this egg until they directly ask him about it.
Right.
Like, like, I think that was very interesting. He finishes his story and says, well, we're done. And only says, oh, yeah, hey, I stole this magical healing crystal after that. And so I thought that was interesting. The second thing I think was interesting was that they say, oh man, I wish we could have seen this crystal egg. Oh, that, muttered Jarvis gloomily.
Yeah,
I
right.
think I think this is interesting. And Asa, maybe you can tell me if I'm like reading into this or if this is super off. But like you think you have a magic healing crystal, you're not going to be like, oh, this, like gloomily about it. And that's what started the fight. I think that is he hinting that he regrets having taken the egg and that he regrets having taken it because he knows he has just started intergalactic war with the mound builders.
Okay, wow. So that's not my interpretation.
Okay,
That
okay,
said, I am only arriving at this interpretation while you were talking, but it feels
okay.
like this connects possibly to the little continuous cliffhangers and hooks that he's giving in his narrative. And I'm just going back to this, like, grandpa by the fire talk to the grandkids. It's like he's kind of a ham, Jarvis. He's
Yes,
like
he is.
spinning a yarn.
He
And he's
loves
like,
it.
he's like, so we were on the desert and it was fatal, but I'll tell you about that later. We'll
Oh,
get to that part. Da, 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 da. So I think the gloomily, he's like constantly performing this story. So the gloomily, I'm
oh,
reading this now as kind of like it's fake. He's just like, all along, this was kind of like the punchline of his story. And now that they've set it up for him, they've teed it up. And, this is like his faux gloomy. And I can just be like, this whole thing, kind of like the very end, he's kind of, I
oh.
don't know. That's based on what you said. That's how I'm interpreting it.
I
So,
like that. I like that. It fits better with Jarvis's character. Um, and I think it's a well-written story because both of them could work. Both of those could be true with what we know of Jarvis, with what we know of the Martian society. And I love your point about Jarvis being a ham. I wrote several times like, wow, Jarvis is just really relishing telling this story. Like he is having a blast
right,
telling this story.
right.
Um, and it all hinges. It's so interesting how we interpreted the word gloomily differently. You saw it. I love this. You saw it as like he's doing a performance. Oh, that old thing. You mean this? Like it's a grand reveal. I saw it as like, oh crap, yeah, this thing I took it. Get ready to, get your guns ready. We're about to engage in a war. So,
I mean, I feel like we say this every week, which is like these stories contain multitudes that the ending is never definitive. For
yes.
example,
Yes.
Mateo Leon Rodriguez says, I like your interpretation,
Oh, thank
Sarah,
you.
right? Which is like clearly an indication that it's possible, plausible. Also, you can imagine if he was faking being friends the whole time, such a great villain moment. Faking being
Yes.
friends to Tweel, you're breaking my heart, Mateo. These two are chums. But
Okay.
it's possible. That is
To
also
that,
consistent. Yeah.
one more thing.
Yeah.
I didn't know how this was going to end, like in a major way. I had no idea where this was going. And I wrote down on page 122, the second to last page, I wrote, at this point, will there be a twist or just an explanation of the end of the adventure? And we're set up earlier with another type of, with that black tentacle monster that they call the dream beast. And basically, this beast gets into your brain and it lures you to it by making it look like something appealing to you. So, um, I'm trying to fancy long. So,
Fancy law.
Fancy Long is the name of a media personality, a vision entertainer, I think they call her, who Jarvis is friends with, specifically friends. Yeah, I know. He insists that they're just friends. And this dream beast projects an image of Fancy Long going like, ooh la la, to draw Jarvis in. And this is when I really started thinking like, is there going to be a really dark twist where this isn't Jarvis, this is a dream beast like luring them all in. So I just didn't know if that was going to be like a bigger twist at the end of the story. Like speaking to Mateo's comment about like there being a great villain moment at the end, I was like, oh man, what if this isn't Jarvis? Like, what if Jarvis is dead and this is the dream beast like luring them in? So
Gosh. Yeah. I mean, my fish mouth is fully hooked by your kind of like this story that you planted about him just telling this story. Like I'm reading that now as him just kind of being like more. It's more ham. It's more show off. I'm imagining Fancy Long as this kind of like pinup type
yeah, yeah,
who
yeah, me too.
it's like the classic. He's like, we're just friends, guys. What he's really saying is that like we're not just friends. You three are like the dorks. back on
Yes.
the ship. I'm the explorer who actually went and saw the monsters. I'm just going to name drop, my casual lovers. You know the
Yes.
one, Fancy Long. Yeah, that's how I'm reading that now.
I love it. I love it. This is such a rich story and something you don't see as much as I would like to in science fiction is just delightful character developments. Like these are fully realized human characters with foibles and flaws and giant egos, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, I love that.
My friend, have we covered all of the things that you wanted to
I
cover
think
from A Martian
yes,
Odyssey?
yes. This gets through my list. So if this is your first time joining us on one of these story clubs, we are engaging with these stories to write better. So this is the part of the show where we always ask, as a writer, Sarah, what have you learned from this story? What can you take? What can you steal? Devices, ideas. What can you put to use here?
I feel like every time we read one of these stories, I become freer. And I say that I see a wider and wider range of possibilities of things that work. And so I really enjoyed seeing essentially an and then structure that's done in a good and compelling way. So I love seeing that. I love seeing the rules broken in a good way. And I just really, it reminded me how much I love humor in both my science fiction and my horror. I love good humor. And I don't know, it just reminds me how humanizing it can be for your character to have a sense of humor. And there's a dark side to this too. It can be very easy, I think, to slip into a sardonic, annoying, they call it Whedon-esque, like Joss Whedon, banter character that can quickly wear on your nerves. But I think that this hammy gentleman just hit the nail right on the head. At least for me. Again, this is all subjective. So that's what I'm going to take away from this story.
I like that. I like that a lot. And I think that distinction between organic humor and just the writer being funny is
Or
important. Like
trying super hard.
trying super hard to be funny. But yeah, this humor came so straight from the character. Like this didn't, this felt like Jarvis was funny. Yeah.
It was his voice. Yep.
Mateo Leon Rodriguez says, an unreliable narrator can make the ending have more interpretations. For sure. This dude, Jarvis, just has this romp over Mars and gets rescued. Virtually all of his narrative is, we just have to take his word for it.
Yeah. Well, and I was thinking earlier, like, was Tweel even real? And I would have doubted that if Putz hadn't also seen, Putz is the mechanic, I think, the German mechanic. Putz saw Tweel and described him as a freak ostrich. And so we have verification that Tweel exists, but without Putz's verification.
And saw the mountain
Yes.
because he rescued him.
Yes.
So
he can
I
verify.
think that's an important part. Yeah, that is actually really important. And we have not always had that in these stories.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and especially the last one, the Conquest of Gola.
Who knew? Yeah, who
like,
knows?
I'm the last surviving. I can tell you anything.
Right.
So yeah. What about you, though? What did you take away for your writing?
Well, I really love what you said, and I'm going to take that to heart. I think for me, I think I feel the same version of freeing and expanding what a sense is possible. And for me, I just think it's like, when you brought up is like, okay, the and then structure is totally viable and accessible if done right. For me, it's just again, an invitation to kind of live in different psychic spaces as a writer. And just, even if that doesn't, become my voice as a writer or something, even if that's not where my best work lives, just like kind of, just letting the kinds of stories that I tell, what that bucket is, be bigger, So I feel the same.
That's
us growing as writers. Keeps happening. That just keeps happening in this story club.
I love it.
Expansiveness. Y'all, if it's your first time here, Wednesdays, Science Fiction Story Club. You just witnessed one. Next week, let's queue up next week. Next week, we have a story called The Last Poet and the Robots by A. Merritt.
AKA you. No, I'm kidding. It's not you.
Yeah, this is not me. My name is Asa Merritt. I am not a Merritt. I first sentence of this story. Narodny, the Russian, sat in his laboratory. Narodny's laboratory was a full mile under earth. It was one of 100 caverns, some small and some vast, cut out of the living rock. Hot. Okay, we're back underground again. So that's
I
exciting.
love that. Well, and this
So,
is
yeah,
our
go ahead.
horror
Yeah.
club, but it also sounds like there might be some sci-fi elements. So
No, that was sci-fi. That was next
that
week
was
on
sci-fi. I was like,
Yeah.
wow, there's so much like okay. But also that is something we've seen.
Tomorrow, same time, same place, is Horror
Yes.
Story Club, where we're doing the similar process of reading one short horror story a week, talking about them as writers, discussing them additionally on our Discord, which I'll share. Tomorrow's story is called The Autopsy by Michael Shea. Dr. Winters stepped out of the tiny Greyhound station and into the midnight street that smelt of pines in the river, though the street was in the heart of the town. Vibes.
I like that.
Loving.
Oh, I like that.
Loving
Feels
a
very,
tiny
like-
Greyhound station in the dark.
I love that. It's very Twin Peaks. It's very Pacific Northwestish. I don't know.
Yes, agreed.
Love
Anyway, folks, the link to the Discord is right here. I'm going to throw it up on the screen. Okay, that's probably up on Twitch. So if
Yes,
you're
that's up on Twitch.
I'll
Yeah,
throw it
small
up
town.
here. I'll let that live there on Twitch for a moment. Essentially, what's happening in the Discord is we are gathering readers and writers who are in this similar moment of process, which is to say, reading short stories, writing short stories. There's a lot of novel writers in the mix, of course. Also, on Fridays, Sarah and I also do writing workshops. And this week, I'm really excited. I'm going to do a deep dive into our last week's story, The Crowd by Ray Bradbury. Talk about how that's structured, talk about how that is a really useful potential structure template. That's Friday, same time. This is the Discord link for anyone who is on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, or if you're just catching this on YouTube, that's where you can find it. Anything else, Sarah, that I'm forgetting?
No, you're wonderful. This is wonderful. I am just enjoying going through these stories with you so much. It has been a mind expanding and just delightful experience. And I'm just happy to be here. And I'm grateful to all of our amazing people in the audience who are watching, whether you're watching this live with us now or later during a replay. Just thank you for being here.
Gosh, I feel the same. Feel the same, Sarah. Thank you for doing this with me, and again to all of you. It's really cool, and I really can't wait to see where we're at. Because I do feel growth happening in real time reading these stories.
Yeah. Once we get through 200 stories, we're going to be different people. And that's amazing.
I love that. All right, y'all. If you're on my channel, I'm going to write today also in the live stream. So it's at the top of the hour in 42 minutes. I'm going to go live, continue working on some short stories. So if you want to hang out and write in the rain, I'll be there.
Sounds wonderful. All right.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.